Hi, we're back at the hotel after work. Today we're talking about some of our pieces to our toolkit, our beginner, our basic beginner toolkit. Very good for household, rental, that type of thing. Just starting out. So this time we're going to talk about our... Now, I opted to go with this Warrior brand Harbor Freight drill. Mainly because of the price, which is $17.99, which I thought was very good. It has several features that we're going to talk about. Just a real quick tour of the drill. You have your I do have it plugged in. You have your trigger, you have your mode selector, forward, reverse. You have your trigger lock button. This is what they're calling a belt holder or belt loop holder, whatever. But that's a belt clip, I guess is the thing. And this one has a little level in there to make sure that you're going level to whatever it is that you're drilling into. And then this up front is what's called the chuck. Those little teeth in there are what open and close when you tighten or loosen your chuck. And this specific style is what's called a keyless chuck, because you do it by hand, whereas there's other ones that have a little hole there and like a gear, and you have to have a special tool, and that's what tightens it down. So you have your variable speed trigger, which just means that the more you squeeze it, the faster or slower it goes. So you can squeeze it really slow, or you can squeeze it really fast. Okay? And I'll try to do like a noise warning on that. Again, you have your trigger lock. Once your trigger is depressed a certain way, locks the trigger in, and then you have to pull the trigger again to unlock it. You have your directional switch. This one is loose because as you're looking at it, it's spinning to the left. You adjust it, and then as you're looking at it, it's spinning to the right. So as you're looking at the drill, it's taking it to the right. So let's see if I can do this with, actually, you know what? So you do your chuck, you hold your chuck like this, and spin your drill, it tightens it up. And I actually have a little bit from our honorable mention here. So you take your little bit. Now this isn't ideal, but this is how it works. You put it in there, and then you tighten it on, and now that's on your drill, and you can throw it in reverse. Okay, so there are also, okay, this one doesn't have any settings on the as far as drill speed. Excuse me, on the actual thing, because it does that with this. So it's always going to be full power drill setting, full gear, all that kind of stuff, but it bases it off of how fast or how hard you're squeezing this trigger. There is a clutch on this, so once it gets past a certain torque level, it will click, basically not it won't be able to go anymore. Like it won't just keep hammering it in, which is what your impact would do. I opted for the corded version because I feel like it's a little bit beginner friendly. You have a little bit more power, kind of the whole sharp knife versus dull knife situation, you're going to have all the power all the time, but you have to pay attention to where your outlets are. So that's going to add you another level of thought before you just go willy-nilly start drilling into things. You have to actually plug it in, and that's going to give you a little bit of a second to maybe gather your thoughts or think about what it is exactly that you're trying to do. And on top of that, batteries are expensive. So the tools themselves are not that expensive comparatively. The batteries is where the money sink is. So being a beginner, being a first toolkit type situation, your battery choice hasn't been made yet. You don't really know what batteries are out there. You don't even know what you're going to be doing with this stuff. So I opted to leave the cordless versions for a later time. Once you kind of get a little bit more experience, a little bit more feeling out what you're going to be doing, what type of jobs that you have, and then what brand you are. Maybe, me personally, I have DeWalt. And the only reason why I have DeWalt is because I happened to get DeWalt first, and that's the battery that I have. And that's the most expensive part of the tool, is the battery. So all of my tools, well, not all of them, because I have a couple one-offs. I've got a couple Ryobis that we bought, brad nailers and things like that, because the air-powered ones I have were not as convenient to use, and my wife didn't want to have to deal with the compressor and the air hose and everything. So, I bought her a little Ryobi one. I think I've got a couple Hart batteries because I was using them on the job when I was driving over the road, and I just needed a drill, but I didn't need a super great one. I just needed something that I could use when I needed it. So I've got I think I've got Hart, Ryobi, and then mostly DeWalt. And the only reason I picked DeWalt is because that's just the one I happened to buy first. If I would have bought Milwaukee or Makita or whatever first, that would have been the one that I bought. And that'd be the battery that I have. But, there's a lot of competition between all those, a lot of brand, smack talking or whatever you want to call it. And in all reality, most of them are going to be good enough for at-home use. The only time you start getting into real situations where it actually matters is if you're doing it professionally, using the tool professionally, or you use it more than just your regular DIY home maintenance type situation. But anyways, once you figure out what battery you were going to prefer, what tool brand, what color you like best, doesn't matter. But once you figure that out, then you'll move on to the cordless stuff. You'll move on to the impact drivers. You'll move on to your hammer drills if you have the jobs. But the impact, I use my impact for pretty much everything that I do. I have 2 drills because they came as a kit with the battery and a charger. And then I've got an impact that came with a battery and charger when I bought it. And I very, very, very rarely use my drills. But the impact is definitely easier to strip things out. It's definitely easier to tear through wood. It's to strip out your screws. You have to have a lot more control with that. A drill with a clutch or a variable speed trigger, you're going to be able to control that a little bit better than when you're snugging something down, especially small fine screws, which more than likely you're not using a drill for them anyways. But that the impact's going to come later. I use mine all the time, but I started off with a drill, and once I became a little bit more familiar with it and comfortable with it, and there's some things that I still use a drill for. but that is irrelevant at this point. The corded drill is going to give you more than enough utility, more than enough power, and more than enough control to do any task that you're going to need to do in regard to being a beginner and having this be your first toolkit. Yeah, so those are my reasons for picking a corded drill versus a battery powered drill as a beginner kit. It breaks one of my rules for, well, it doesn't technically break it for having any overlap or duplicate tools, because yeah, you are going to buy another drill type item, but an impact is not a drill, so technically it doesn't break that rule. Now, more often than not, you can get a drill and impact combo kit with the battery for cheaper than it is to buy just a couple batteries. So you are going to have a duplicate, but it's a kit. It makes more sense to get the drill anyways, even though it is a duplicate. And then eventually you're going to be getting a second impact wrench or impact driver or a second drill, because doing something with one drill where you're constantly drilling and then screwing is, I mean, it's definitely doable, but it's a little bit of a pain because you're having to change your drill bit and then do your driver back and forth, and it's just so much easier and so much more convenient, especially if you're doing it a lot, that you have one drill that's a drill, one drill that's a driver, or one impact that's a drill, one impact with a driver bit on it. But for beginner purposes, just starting out, not having a battery platform, and that's, I think, the most important part, is if this is your first toolkit, this is your first tool, you don't have a battery picked yet. So a corded one's the way to go. My first one was just like this Warrior brand, but it was a Black & Decker, and this would have been maybe 2007, 2008 when I bought it. After anyways, that's about when I picked it up. I think it still works to this day. I mean, I haven't used it in years, but I still have it. Anyways, corded drill, variable speed, directional. Oh look, it even has the arrow on for you. So if you're over here, you're going that way, and then if you're over here, you're going that way. And then there's a couple other things that we can talk about as far as maintenance, but we'll get into that later. Maybe we can start doing like a tool breakdown or something like that. That's 13 minutes of me talking about a drill. But thanks for your attention. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear about them. And thank you for your time. Bye.